Welcome, and thank you for volunteering for the Literacy Council of Frederick County. My name is Michael Cohen. I've been a tutor for several years, and I want to share with you today some of the challenges involved in teaching writing, also some of the joys. There's nothing better than watching your student apply what you're trying to teach them. Students participate in a lot of writing activities. They write new vocabulary words, write dialogues, or entries in an information grid to practice grammar. Writing, one of the four components of language, supports and is supported by the other three components: listening, speaking, and reading. Which elements of writing will you focus on depending on your student's skill level and needs? You should not assume that if a student's English is good, their writing will also be good. A student may have focused on learning to speak and understand English, but they may have spent very little time developing writing skills. We will focus on beginning skills and practical writing exercises that facilitate simple communication. Writing includes mechanics, such as handwriting and spelling, as well as language structure rules about things like capitalization, punctuation, and subject-verb agreement. Some basic literacy students need help with writing mechanics. Beginning ESL students who can't read and write their native language or whose language does not use the Roman alphabet may also need help in the basics of handwriting. It's good to help students realize that whatever they think and say can be written down. Students often say they need to learn to spell better in order to improve their writing. But spelling does not need to be a barrier to begin writing. Beginning students can do very simple writing tasks, such as writing individual words or composing short sentences. You can also do language experience stories with your students. This is where you write down what your student says. It reinforces that what is thought and said can be written. More advanced writing or composition involves brainstorming what to say, organizing ideas so that they make sense, creating and revising drafts, providing enough detail to convey the message, and choosing words that keep the reader interested. But most of that goes beyond what a beginning student is ready to do. So for this topic, we are going to focus on writing mechanics and very simple composition tasks that will be helpful to our students who are mostly at lower levels. You will find more information on composition in the Teaching Writing handout and in your tutor information book. Writing in a second language can be challenging. Assuming that a student can read in their own language, a big challenge can be the language's writing system. Some languages, like Chinese, are not alphabetic. The Chinese language uses symbols to represent entire words or phrases. Other languages, like Arabic and Russian, are alphabetic, but their letters are completely different. And in Arabic, you read from right to left. French and Spanish more closely resemble English. They use the same alphabet, but the words and grammar are different, and often those same letters make different sounds. These sentences all say the same thing: I like to write. Tutors working with beginning students may need to begin with basic handwriting instruction. Here are some strategies. Working with a handwriting chart. This chart shows the correct direction of the pencil to form the letters. These charts are available on the internet as PDF files for printing. Teach your student to look at the chart when they're working on a writing activity. If your student hasn't done a lot of writing, they may not have the fine motor skills needed to write legibly in a small space. So start with large motor skills. Begin by having your student use their arms and hands to write the letters in the air. This is also a great technique to use for kinesthetic learners. Next, have them write the letters on the top of the desk or table using their fingers. Then have them use pencils to write letters on unlined paper. Then have them trace the outline of the letters on lined paper. And finally, write them without tracing. Focus on printing letters, not cursive writing. Printing closely resembles the text your student will see in books and online, and any form they need to fill out will say, "Please print." Written letters do not need to be taught in alphabetical order. Letter formation is better taught in the context of what your student needs to write, such as their name and address, or by grouping letters that are formed with similar motions. Let's do a brief exercise. Ready? Pretend you're a beginning student. Take a piece of paper and a pencil and write the first 7 lowercase letters, A through G, of the alphabet. Say the name and sound of each letter as you write it, but use only your non-dominant hand, the one you don't normally use to write with. I'll give you a minute. Now, switch to your dominant hand, the one you usually write with, and continue with the alphabet. How did you do? How did it feel? Clumsy, awkward, difficult? Did you feel relieved when going back to your normal hand? You had to really concentrate, didn't you? I asked you to do this to show you how a student feels when learning to write. Reflect back on this experience when you are working with a beginning student on their writing. After your student can write letters comfortably, you can encourage them to copy words and sentences. This will help them learn the proper spacing between letters and words, when to use capital letters, and where to place punctuation marks. It will also help to instill a sense of English word order and grammar. Copying activities should be kept short and should be related to your students' particular interests and goals. You can alter copying exercises to keep them interesting. It can be difficult to notice small differences in words in a second language. Have your student copy words that are similar with one different letter, such as bar, bat, bad. A more advanced student can complete a fill-in-the-blank exercise, or you can dictate words or an entire sentence for your student to write. This is the first step toward producing independent writing. You can do activities that address simple grammar rules, such as giving your student a short passage and having them circle each word that uses a capital letter. Then explain the rule that the first word of a sentence and the names of people and places must start with a capital letter. You can then have them practice identifying capital letters in another short paragraph. In this way, You are teaching grammar through usage rather than just memorizing rules. One of the reasons some people don't like to write is they are not good spellers. So it can be useful to help students find certain spelling patterns, like the silent E at the end of the word that almost always makes the previous vowel long. A multi-sensory approach can help students see spelling patterns. Let's practice with the word straighten. First, spell the word aloud for the student to write down. Have them write the word straighten on a paper in rather large letters. Tell the student, first simply look at the word. Now, read the word aloud. Ask the student, are there parts that are spelled as they sound? Which ones? Straten. Are there parts that look unusual? Which ones? AIGH or GHT? Are there special parts like prefixes or suffixes? EN. Now, read the word aloud again. As you look at the word, say the letters from left to right. Now trace the letters with your finger on paper as you say them again, and then read the word again. Now, close your eyes and picture the word in your mind. Spell it aloud as you picture it. Now, write the word from memory, and then check it against the example. Multisensory techniques help students remember. Earlier, we mentioned writing letters in the air. This is one way to make writing practice multisensory. Using the large muscles provides an additional pathway to the brain to help students retain what they learn. Tactile techniques can make writing practice more multisensory. This slide shows a word written on paper covered with needlepoint fabric. This works well when you see through it. Your student can trace over the letters while they feel the texture of the fabric. You can use any textured surface for tracing, such as carpet or sandpaper, or the sensitive inner arm, while they look at the word and say the letters out loud. Using several senses at once, seeing, hearing, and touching, along with speaking, reinforces the memory. Another good activity is to practice with letter tiles, such as Scrabble or Bananagram, or magnetic refrigerator tiles. You can do this in an online lesson if your student has letters at home. Your student should look at the written word and say the letters aloud as they move the tiles. They can then try it without the written model. This is a fun activity and may be less intimidating than writing on paper, since correcting mistakes is so much easier. Your student can follow up by writing the word using paper and pencil. Writing incomplete sentences may be especially challenging for some students who don't realize that a sentence needs to express a complete thought. It's helpful to first describe the parts of a sentence. The subject contains a noun or pronoun and all the words that describe it. The predicate contains the verb and all the words that describe the verb. Together, they complete a thought, forming a sentence. One error students often make is writing sentence fragments. A sentence fragment is missing a subject or predicate. What's wrong with the first statement? The people in the back of the line. The answer is this sentence fragment is missing a predicate that tells what the people in the back of the line did. Consider the second statement. What's wrong with this? Rush to the gates on Main Street. The answer is this fragment is missing a subject. We do not know who rushed to the gates. Once your student can consistently write simple, complete sentences, you can work with them on writing better sentences. This activity can help students learn to write better sentences. You write a five-word sentence. It should contain a noun, an action verb, and an object, but no proper nouns, pronouns, or prepositions. In this case, the sentence is, the boy threw the ball. Next, ask your student to add a descriptive word for each noun and rewrite the sentence. Tell them, add words that describe the boy and the ball. Your student might add, the tall boy threw the red ball. For intermediate students, you may want to explain that an adverb tells how something is done and ask them to add an adverb to the sentence. The student might write, the tall boy quickly threw the red ball. For advanced students, ask them to add a prepositional phrase to the sentence and rewrite it. For example, the tall boy quickly threw the red ball to the girl. You can even make a fun game out of this by challenging your student to keep adding descriptors until the sentence is packed with modifiers. You can then introduce the use of commas. Students sometimes become too concerned with the technical aspects of writing and lose sight of the fact that writing is a tool for communicating ideas. To keep a balance between communication, creativity, and writing mechanics, you can encourage your student to get their ideas down on paper and then work together correcting spelling and grammar mistakes. Remember to encourage creative writing. Sentence starters, such as those shown on the slide or in your tutor information book, provide parts of sentences and the student completes the rest. They are different from fill in the blanks in that the student has more control and can be more creative. There can be many right answers. Sentence starters can be combined with other writing techniques, such as using photographs or models to help students do more creative writing. Another way to encourage more independent writing is to have students answer questions. You can show students that they can use the words from questions to form their answers in complete sentences. For example, you could write the question, where do you like to eat? Most likely, your students will respond with one word or phrase like Wendy's. I prefer McDonald's, but that's their choice, which is not a complete sentence. Tell your students to use that word or phrase in a sentence, such as, I like to eat at Wendy's, pointing out that the phrase like to eat is in both the question and answer. You can ask questions like those on the slide and others while looking at photos. There is much more detail on how to do these activities in the handout, Teaching Writing. Yet another way to support students with their writing is to give them models they can imitate for content and style. For example, suppose your student needs to write an absentee note for her child at school. You could give her 2 or 3 examples of absentee notes to read. You would then discuss the different types of information found in each of them. Information that was in some but not others, and information your student thinks is important but wasn't included. Or you might use an information grid to capture the student's personal information for each type of model, such as the children's names and the names of their teachers. You can use these models to create a template to write an absentee note or text. In the examples on the slide, the student would substitute their own information for the placeholders. You and your student could also brainstorm additional real-world writing situations where a template might be useful, such as sending a thank you note or filling out a form. If your student is a beginner, we hope these ideas will be helpful. Remember that you can find more ideas in the handouts and tutor information book. On a personal level, I will tell you that teaching writing is one of the most satisfying things about working with students, because the results will make you proud. Thank you.